Hey, Lauren here. Let's talk about the recent shooting of British BLM activist Sasha Johnson. And this did just happen over the weekend, so I don't think we have quite all the facts yet, but here is what's been reported so far by The Guardian. They say that Black Lives Matter activist Sasha Johnson is in a critical condition after sustaining a gunshot wound to her head in an incident in South London, her affiliated group, Taking the Initiative Party, has announced on social media. In a statement on the group's Facebook page, the party said the incident happened in the early hours of Sunday and followed numerous death threats. A Met Police statement, though, said there was nothing to suggest it had been a targeted attack. Obviously, anytime that someone is shot and put in the hospital, it is a tragedy. It's a tragedy for that person. And I think in this particular case, this woman is actually a mother. So I can't even imagine how her children are feeling right now. But the reason why this particular story is getting so much attention is that gunshot wounds don't often happen in the United Kingdom, right? There's not a huge gun culture there. They're more about stabbings, unfortunately. And B, this is also newsworthy because of the particular activist that this has happened to. She is a noted anti-police activist. And lately I've been operating under the idea that you should live by the standards you set for yourself and others. And I've had people call me hypocritical when I do things like say, well, if you support online censorship, you don't really have much of a platform to stand on when you yourself are censored. But it's like, no, that doesn't make me hypocritical. That makes you hypocritical if you don't like the outcomes of that. And I definitely don't want to say that this person deserved to be shot because I don't think that's true at all. But in this video, I merely want to talk about how when you go around campaigning for things like defunding the police, there are consequences to that. Before we get into it any further, though, I do want to say a huge thank you to today's sponsor, Health with Lauren. I've been trying to make my sponsor segues smooth and related to the story in question, but in this case, I got nothing. So collagen products are selling everywhere and for good reason. Collagen is revered for giving skin its strength and elasticity along with the power to reduce wrinkles. And this isn't just hearsay, by the way. There are thousands of studies out there to back up these claims. The problem is, though, that typical collagen supplements like the type you find on store shelves often don't work because they are filled with cheap or low-grade collagen, and they may even have harmful ingredients out there. However, the problem is that a lot of typical collagen supplements like the type you might find on store shelves often don't work because they are filled with cheap or low-grade collagen. If you're someone who has tried one of these products before and didn't see results, it's not necessarily because collagen just doesn't work. The problem is more likely with the specific product that you tried. And that is why I highly recommend Health with Lauren. Health with Lauren is the collagen solution for aging that America is going crazy for. It's the best anti-aging solution on the market, and it is filled with the highest quality collagen blends that the body actually needs to look and feel younger. So you can try Health with Lauren today for 51% off by going to healthwithlauren.com. Again, that is healthwithlauren.com, or by checking out the link below. And by the way, just a huge thank you to our sponsors on this channel, because it's hard to be monetized when you're talking about things like BLM and shootings and Israel, which apparently has just been my jam lately. So now let's go over who exactly this Sasha Johnson person is. And even if you're not familiar with her name, odds are that you have seen footage of her being shared online because she kind of went viral when she gave this talk at a BLM rally in the UK.
Racism thrives on capitalism. The back of racism is capitalism. And they say about education, we need a black militia. I ain't scared of no terrorist group. The police is no different from the KKK. They stand around and protect statues and buildings instead of people. They need to join the local council and start to litter pick too. When I say if they have a pepper spray, we have our own too. They have smokes, we have it too. Come together, put your fist in the air. Black power! Don't ever be scared to say it doesn't mean that you hate another race, and anybody that said that you hate them, they too have hidden racism because they're scared of your blackness. Black is beautiful. Black is evident.
So she's calling police the KKK, is clearly insinuating that Britain is racist, capitalism bad, and she seems to be very in favor of, frankly, political violence. She is supporting things like revolution, and I know some people are going to say you shouldn't be politicizing the tragedy of her shooting, but let's be real here. It seems like this woman's method of activism is all about politicizing tragedies. And actually, even with her shooting, her own party is already politicizing this, or should I say, her own side of the political spectrum. After news of the shooting broke, Diane Abbott, who is an MP and a far-left figure, posted that Black activist Sasha Johnson is in hospital in critical condition after sustaining a gunshot wound to the head. Nobody should have to potentially pay with their life because they stood up for racial justice. Hashtag Black Lives Matter. And keep in mind that at the time I'm filming this, police say there is absolutely no evidence that Johnson was the actual intended victim of the shooting or that this was politically motivated in any way, but already the left is trying to paint her as some martyr. As The Guardian explains, it's believed the shooting occurred in the vicinity of a house where a party was taking place and a number of people may have been in the area. A spokesperson said that while the investigation was at an early stage, there was nothing to suggest it was a targeted attack or that the woman had received any credible threats against her before this incident. Detectives from the Met Specialist Crime Command were leading the investigation. But hey, screw the actual facts and evidence when it comes to this case. The left is already painting this as just another instance of too many guns or violence against women or you name the social cause they support. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if tomorrow I wake up to see that this shooting is actually the result of climate change or something like that. Case in point, as The Guardian also explains, Claudia Webb, the MP for Leicester East, wrote online, "Shocking to hear of the gunshot to the head of Sasha Johnson. All women should be safe on our streets. Wishing her a full recovery, sending love and solidarity to her family, friends, and loved ones. There are still too many guns and violent weapons damaging too many lives. Hashtag BLM." All right, guys. Even if we are to accept the idea that Johnson was targeted because she's a BLM activist or because she is a woman or that the problem is really there are just too many guns in the UK, which, I mean, if they weren't shooting people, they would be stabbing people, as we see all the time in London, sadly. What would BLM's solution to this be? We don't know a lot or really anything about who the shooter actually was, but it seems pretty clear that it was not a police officer. And people like Johnson often frame the conversation as if violence on the streets is something that solely happens at the hands of police officers toward members of the Black community or Hispanic community or whatever marginalized community they're talking about. But what is their answer to crime like this? Because it doesn't really seem like they have any. Sure, people will say things like, oh, we should redirect police funds to social workers. What is a social worker supposed to do in a case like this? Like, do they want the social worker to investigate and try to figure out who exactly committed the crime? And once you find the person that shot Johnson in the head, is a social worker supposed to just sit and have a chat with them in lieu of sending them to prison? Because, I mean, we often hear BLM say things now like defund the police, abolish prisons, not just BLM, but actual sitting members of Congress, people like Rashida Tlaib. And I mean, I hate to say that's where this type of rhetoric leads you to, just crime in the streets, but it kind of seems like that is exactly the case. And this is happening in the UK, but in so many American cities, we see this increase in crime that follows when you try to remove police budgets or when you demonize police officers and completely disincentivize them from doing their job because they're afraid of being prosecuted simply for doing what they were told. And again, when it comes to this woman, Sasha Johnson, in case anyone is upset still about me politicizing this or trying to bring her politics into this incident, I really want to reiterate that this is someone who repeatedly has kind of legitimized violence when it comes to politics. There's also this clip of her that's been recirculating in light of her being shot.
Silence is violence. If we keep silent, we are also a part of that oppression. I refuse to let nobody put a gag on me. That's why I don't connect to no political party. We need our own political party because we have David Lammy, tokenistic. We have Sadiq Khan, is tokenistic. Priti Patel, tokenistic. We've had so many inquiries. We've had the Grenfell inquiry, the Windrush inquiry, the McPherson inquiry, the COVID inquiry. F them. They know they're racist. Get ready to fight them. If they don't bring peace, they know what's going to happen. One solution!
Revolution!
One solution!
Revolution!
One solution!
Revolution!
No justice!
No peace!
Take it to the streets!
The police!
If you don't want things like crime and shootings happening on your streets, don't do things like call the police, the KKK, or try to threaten people who disagree with you. Because the thing about political violence and violence in general is that it cuts both ways. And I feel like as a society, just the West in general, because keep in mind, this is not happening in America, this is happening in the UK. Over the past 2 years, we've really reached a point where crime, it's almost meaningless in so many of these urban centers. It seems like so many of these attacks, whether it's rioting, shootings, lootings, you name it, just go unpunished. It's like there's no rule of law anymore. And as terrible as it is for Sasha Johnson and her family to now be in this situation, looking forward, maybe we should have a conversation about how to make sure this doesn't happen again. And spoiler alert, the answer is not in defunding the police. And as much attention as this particular story is getting, don't forget that in the UK, in London, there are people who are stabbed all the time and whose cases don't get a fraction of the headlines that this one is getting. The same is true for gunshot victims in New York, in Chicago, in Minneapolis. Crime is up pretty much across the board, but the reason why we don't often hear about it in the mainstream media is because they don't want to discuss these issues because it makes their own policies look bad. I mean, places like New York, they've been Democrat run for exactly how long? They have no one to blame but themselves for the way things are going. And I think the only reason why they are reporting on Johnson's shooting is because, as we saw, they're trying to spin this into BLM activists being the victim. And it's like, no, if anything, you are the victim of your own misguided anti-police ideas. And it's actually interesting because on social media, we finally saw prominent leftists, specifically Ezra Klein, address this increase in crime that we've been seeing in so many cities. But the kicker is that he doesn't see this as a problem necessarily because, more people are being shot and that's bad in and of itself. No, according to him, the real problem is that this makes liberal policies look bad. I'm not even kidding. Let's read it. Violent crime is spiking. Homicides in cities were up by 25 to 40% in 2020, the largest single year increase since 1960, and 2021 isn't looking any better. This is a crisis on its own terms. Thank you for admitting that, Ezra. But then he continues, but he then says, but. And if you watch Dr. Phil, you know that he says, but essentially means forget everything I just said. Here's what I really think. So to that note, Ezra Klein says, but it's also a crisis for the broader liberal project in two downstream ways. First, violent crime supercharges inequality. Families who can flee do. Businesses close or never open. Banks won't make loans. Property values plummet. Children are traumatized with lifelong impacts on stress and cognition. Okay, so crime is bad because it makes inequality worse and affects poor people more. You know what? Despite Ezra's disclaimer that crime is bad in and of itself, I'm kind of feeling like that's not really what he thinks. Crime would still be awful even if it didn't exacerbate inequality and even if it does happen to rich people. He also says, second, fear of violence undermines liberal politics. Just look at America post 9/11 or after the crime surges of the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Strongmen politicians win, punitive responses like mass incarceration and warrior policing rise, social trust collapses. So I think all of that is true. Ezra Klein is absolutely right that I think a lot of people out there are looking at the rising crime in many cities and thinking, maybe Democrats who largely let this happen aren't the best people to fix this problem. And yeah, that absolutely is happening, but it doesn't seem like Ezra has any solution to that problem. I mean, if it is just some PR nightmare that this is making liberal policies look bad, then what is the liberal solution to this? What is the liberal solution for actually fixing crime? And I would love to hear from people who support Sasha Johnson and her policies, what could be done to prevent her from being shot. They might point to more gun control. The UK already has such strict gun control, so it's like, what do you do? What do you do when a person out there feels like there is no accountability so they can do whatever they want? I have yet to hear a coherent and practical answer from the left. If you have any inkling, please let me know. That's pretty much it for now though, and as always, if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Lately, the YouTube algorithm has not been very kind to my channel. maybe it's because I do things like interview, the info warrior himself. And heck, even my Dr. Jordan Peterson interview seems to have been throttled. He's like the most mainstream person ever, though. So yeah, any shares are greatly appreciated. Until next time.